From the World of John Wick, Ballerina, which I'm just calling Ballerina for the majority of the video going forward, is directed by Len Wiseman, who you may know from Underworld, Live Free or Die Hard, and this is the second spin-off in the John Wick universe. The first one was the Continental show that was on Peacock, I believe. I haven't seen that show, so I don't have any comments on that, but I have seen all of the John Wick movies so far, and so I was very excited going into this. And in this you follow Eve Macaro, played by Ana de Armas, who is an assassin at the Ruska Roma who's been training for some time now, and she's about to head out on assignment, but essentially what she wants to do is also find the people who murdered her father when she was a kid. And essentially it becomes a revenge story as she's trying to find the killers of her father and the ones who destroyed her family, and she's killing along the way as she goes. This takes place a bit during and then after the events of John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, which is something that you'll notice, quite a bit throughout the movie because there are some very direct references to things that are happening in Parabellum that are tied into this. So it makes it feel very interconnected as a result. But I was also very excited for this movie because the John Wick movies are phenomenal. I love those so much, and so going into this I was, of course, like I said, very excited to see how they would pull it off. And this took a while to get here. I mean, they did this some time back. In fact, so long ago that Lance Reddick, may he rest in peace, is in this movie. But because of the SAG-AFTRA strikes and then some reshoots happening with Chad Stahelski coming in, who was the director of the previous movies, to do some work with the action sequences, it took a minute and now it's finally in theaters. And having seen the movie tonight, I actually went and saw it with my family. I really liked it. I think it's a very solid addition to the John Wick universe, and it's a really great standalone set piece for Ana de Armas, who is a badass in this movie. She is terrific, and there are moments with her where she's just relentlessly kicking ass, which happens quite a bit, particularly in the back half of the movie, where she absolutely holds her own, and she very much is a force to be reckoned with in those moments. There's a few standout set pieces that were really remarkable to behold, particularly one involving a flamethrower. That was some really cool stuff. In fact, the action sequences, I would say, are pretty much up to code. There were a couple of things early on in the movie which I thought were a little rough around the edges, but in a couple of those instances it actually kind of added to the entire thing that Eve is going for, because she's just heading out on her first assignments. And so things are not entirely on expert level yet, so to speak. So yes, she'll make mistakes. She'll take a lot more hits than, you'd expect her to, but she's also not gonna move in a way like, John Wick would, because this is not someone who has, just gone on massive killing sprees just yet. So there are some moments where that choppiness actually works to the favor of those sequences. And some of that relentlessness and brutality that you'd expect to see from the John Wick movies is very much present in here. In fact, there's a couple of moments in here that I would say are some of the more brutal moments of the franchise so far. There's a couple of things involving grenades, which I won't spoil too much. I was like, wow, that was pretty intense. Much like the previous movies, there is that very neon-soaked look to a lot of it, so lots of really cool colors that are used, some really great, visual moments that are once again hyper-stylized, and those are once again very much brought to life over here. All of it backed up with a really cool score, once again, from Tyler Bates and Joel J. Richard, as well as some great work from Le Castlevania, once again, who have, he's done a really good job with the previous movies, and that's once again the case over here. I also like the other supporting cast members that you get over here. It's great to see Ian McShane and Lance Reddick once again, both of them at the Continental. It was great to revisit that location. Angelica Houston once again, who you may remember from Chapter 3, she's once again over here, and that was also really cool. And just to see some of the expansions that are happening with the World of the High Table in, everything that we've seen so far, and also adding some new stuff to it. I did like some of those expansions. It just made it feel a lot more richer and a lot more interesting, because some rules don't work the same way as things that we have seen in the previous installments. So to see how things can become a lot more malleable and how much more, interesting some, workings can be as compared to work, in another location, it's just It's what makes the world building so much more exciting. And of course, I loved seeing Keanu Reeves as John Wick once again, just to, be a part of the action a little bit. He's not in the movie that much, so, if you're going to expect him, you're not going to see him, a ton. But you're not even supposed to. I mean, this is Eve Macaro's movie. This is not John Wick's movie. We've got 4 movies with John Wick. So it just feels like an extra, sort of cherry on top of the entire thing. He's kind of like Darth Vader in Rogue One, right? It's like the entire thing's happening and then you get a few bits with Vader just to be like, all right, we got a little bit of this here for you too. Where I think Ballerina does fall short a bit though, is in some of the storytelling. Yes, it's a revenge story and you are following Eve as she wants to get to whoever has, done this to her family. And yes, there is a compelling reason to that, but I feel like the threat that she's chasing, I didn't really think much of that threat. Gabriel Byrne, who plays the villain of the movie, he was fine. I think of the villains in the John Wick franchise, he might be my least favorite one. I just didn't get a lot of time with him, and I would have liked a little bit more time with him, especially because his side of the story, there are other aspects that they introduce which we've not really come across so far in this entire universe. And I was thinking, that's cool. I would have liked a little bit more insight into that, or just something more to differentiate them as to like why these guys are working a little differently and what makes them tick specifically. And in that revenge story that you're following along with Eve, there are some things that happen which you kind of expect from a revenge story. Some story beats, like some every now and then there's a revenge movie cliche that's sprinkled in there, whether it be some big scene that might be coming up. I'm trying not to spoil too much over there, and there are a couple of things like that over here. And yeah, there were some underdeveloped things that were happening on the side too. There are some side characters that you don't get a ton of time with, who I'd like to have a little bit more time with. Characters like Norman Reedus' character, for example. But overall, despite those flaws, I think Ballerina is still a fun time. There is some good stuff over here. Like I said, when it comes to the action sequences, it very much does deliver. It takes a while to get, fully going, but, once it does, it is nonstop to the finish, and it is worth checking out still. Not my favorite movie in the John Wick universe, but a pretty solid one yet, and I would love to see more with Eve Macaro in the future if they ever decide to do that. I'm gonna give From the World of John Wick Ballerina a 7.5 out of 10. I think that about catches up with everything that I missed last week, because there was Predator, Killer of Killers, The Life of Chuck, and now this. So now I'm all done, and now I can talk about the new stuff this week. So How to Train Your Dragon, the review's coming up next. Looking forward to talking about that. Guys, thank you very much as always for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.